Hello,
You got me
Pasiris.
again. And Kamangan, right?
Yeah. I didn't do anything. You were dancing, so I just let the rhythm go. There you go.
And I was doing the drums, and I realized, hey, that music doesn't have the drums. Maybe it needs drums now.
There you go. Good
Yep,
evening,
and it's
Pasiris.
sorry.
Good evening, Pasiris.
Oh, good evening, Kamangan. How are you?
Okay, I'm
And
good.
most importantly, welcome to November.
Yeah. Why is Anyway, that's my personal rant. I'm not going to talk about it. But yeah, welcome to November and into a new brand new theme, right?
That's right.
We've got some exciting guests for this month.
This month.
This month is all about 2023. Yeah. I know we have a month to go to 2022 ending, but we're starting the ball rolling. And looking ahead and looking at 2023, looking at leadership trends and challenges.
Challenges.
And let's start talking about it because, like you said, it's November already, right?
That's right. It's already November. Yes.
Hmm.
And it's a very exciting thing because I know what you said. We got a month or so for another 2 months for the year to end. But I think we are seeing a lot of trends that's already started this year that will probably, no, not probably, I foresee will spill over in 2023. And as organizational leaders and leaders in different fields, I think we need to start looking forward to anticipate some of these trends. And how do we now then embrace that and work with those challenges? Because we're still focusing on results, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right. And in our show, we also talk about leadership. Apart from leadership, we talk a lot about people, and we're not going to be moving away because it's from what we've learned from last month, right? It's about relationships that drive results, and it's about people, isn't it?
Yep, it is. It is.
Okay.
And I think on that note, I think today's topic is
Yes.
very relevant.
That's true.
We're going to talk about a certain kind of people. I wrote in my post today, I'm called a boomer. Ma, you're such a boomer, okay?
Right.
Okay, little does the boy know that I'm not a boomer, I'm a Gen X, so I have to educate him, right?
Yes.
So yeah, Ma, you're such a boomer. It's not a good thing when he says that. It means, it's such like the way he says it. Anyway.
But this is interesting.
Right.
That you mentioned that because our next speaker, not next speaker, our speaker, the first speaker of the month, right? Well, he's got a child, he's got a daughter too, right? Who's in the younger generation, right? But more importantly, he has had extensive experience working in a corporate space. He's been a corporate leader for more than 25 years. He's worked in the Asian region from Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia. And in the last 2 years, he's been the CEO for Prudential in Cambodia and Laos, right? Laos. And what is very interesting is he's a big fan of the future leaders, the Gen Zs.
Oh, you American, huh? Gen Zs, huh?
Yes.
Okay,
Not Z.
Z.
Okay, all right. Okay, whether it's Z or Z, let us call Veejay Madhavan to come in.
Okay, and I'm going to get Veejay up. But before that, let me just add him to stream and change our format. Here we go. Veejay, I'm going to put you where you belong. Just there. All right, very nice. Hi, Veejay. Welcome. Welcome to the show. Yeah. Sometimes in our banter, some of our secrets come out. So you might be getting more than you bargained for, and let's you hear Ashok and I introduce the session and as well as you. I also want to say hello to Sandeep Kulkarni, who is ever present in our shows for the last few months. Thank you for joining us again, Sandeep. Nice to see you this evening. And as usual, keep the questions coming and keep the comments coming as well. All right. I'm going to shut up and ask Ashok to get the ball rolling. Yep. Okay. Right. Go.
Okay, so somebody has says, hi, Veejay and everyone. Yes, hi, Sambad. Welcome to the show. And everyone else, along the way, as we have this discussion with Veejay, if you do have questions or comments, just throw it in there and I'll read it out to you. All right. So, Veejay, sometime in this show, we may have to discuss whether it's Gen Z or Gen Z. I'm going by Gen Z at the moment, but you've been a C-suite leader in this emerging markets, right? And you've seen a lot of these trends with the younger generation coming in, especially the Gen Zs, right?
Yeah.
From what you have seen, how would you describe Gen Zs as employees? What's your experience?
Well, that's a good question. It's a good place to start, Ashok. To me, Gen Zs, you can call them digital natives, you can call them Zoomers.
Ooh,
Some people even call
Zoomers.
them silent generation, which is actually going back to the 50s. But there are many names you can call this generation. But my experience has been this group of young people are the most socially conscious generation I've ever come across
Wow.
for a number of reasons. Let me tell you. First, they've grown up with the internet, with technology, right? With
Okay.
with vast and rich experiences, thanks to media. Uh, and I think for those of you who are here, and even yourself, Sham and Ashok, if you have kids, the first thing your kids get up and do is pick up their phone. So, and that is Gen Z. I mean, studies show that 60% of Gen Zs in Asia wake up with their phone.
Wow.
So, that's part of them, right? We never had this when we were younger, but these kids, these youngsters, I like to call them, and I like to call them kids because I love their freshness that they bring to a lot of ideas in the workplace. So I still call them kids, and they're big users, consumers of the social media, and they're the ones that are very quick to switch if the media doesn't appeal to them. So you see, a wide array, right? You have Line, you have TikTok, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, right? You have Zalo in Vietnam. So there are a number of platforms, they have to, technology has to keep up with them, right? When we were growing up, we had to keep up with technology. But now technology firms have to keep up with this generation. So they are true digital natives, in my view. Second is candor, right? I've been working with Gen Zs for the last 7 years. In fact, situation got me into interacting with them, and it was a real culture shock initially because I've never experienced such candid conversations from any employee. Right? We grew up in an era where our parents told us, don't get into trouble, don't get marked. If you say the wrong thing, you may be passed up for promotion. These people don't believe in that, right? In fact, they speak their mind. And what I've experienced in my time is that they will walk up to you and have a conversation, candid, direct, honest conversations. So candor is one thing I would use to describe Gen Z, right? Candor, and they are very big on their identity with this, right? So even if you see them in social media, they are authentic, but they also create their own memes and their unique identity in various platforms. They're not
Okay.
fake, but they are conscious about their identity. So that candor comes across, and it is consistent with their identity or the persona that they might create on that. Third, this is who believe they can influence brands, right? They can influence companies, they can influence social issues. Uh,
Okay.
you know, during our time, we used to rely on newspapers to get up to speed. But with social media now, information is just there's an overload of information, and there's so
Hmm.
much information that is factually correct, distorted, skewed, fake. You can say that. But when they have a social issue, they know that people talk and they rely on their network. And when they have a view, they believe they need to influence that view. If they see something that they don't agree with, they will air it, and
Okay.
they're able to bring people onto their bandwagon, right? And it becomes a community in itself, trying to influence change. You look at the number of brands that have to be that start to reinvent itself just to keep up with these people, right?
Okay.
And I can talk a little bit about how they do that with organizations, separately, but believe they have a voice, they have a moral obligation to do it, so they raise these issues.
Okay.
Uh, you've seen this in places like Thailand, where I live right now, where it's the youth through social media that are actually speaking out against, the authoritarian regimes, the
Sure.
unfairness in policies, corporate bullying, right? You have corporate companies who just shirk responsibility, or they
Okay.
say, you say A, but you're doing B. They voice it. We wouldn't in our era, right? We are much more
Okay.
reserved. We've been told, it is not good to go against the flow. Be with the flow. But these people will create new flows.
Right.
That's one thing about you. So
Okay.
these three things come to me at the top of my mind.
Okay, okay. A quick question here, Vijay, because I like what you just mentioned about they're socially conscious. They're tech savvy in the sense where the digital natives,
Mm,
they influence brands. Now, when you first started off, you said you were a bit shocked initially, right, working with
mm,
them. There's a
mm.
yes, you give an example of the candor part of things, but what I heard was the shock part. And what I'm
Yeah.
hearing as you describe them is you have now a different perception of them. But that's you
Yes.
with your experience. That's on one end.
Yeah.
Now,
There's no way.
you are fortunate. You're fortunate. And we are
Mm,
fortunate to hear that perception from you. Now,
mm.
from your point of view, what are perceptions other people hold on these kids?
Oh, I've heard a lot, and I've heard it when I've been championing Gen Z's. Since 2017, everybody is,
2017.
peers,
Wow.
my peers used to come to me and said, "Are you sure? Young kids, they're mollycoddled, right? They're soft. They haven't
Okay.
seen the real world. They still behave like kids. They're not grown up yet. Are you
Mhm.
sure you want to, bring these kids in? Do you want to look for people who are slightly more mature with a couple of years of working experience? That's another perception. Third is, I think they're demanding. We have
Okay.
kids. Our kids demand things from us, and they demand until they get it. But there are reasons why they do it. So, but they say they're demanding. They are not willing to give up, sacrifice anything in exchange. They feel it's an entitlement. They're
Right. Yep.
snowflakes, right? Uh, they're sometimes even referred to as being slightly lazy because we used to. I remember when I had school holidays, I used to go out and work, and whether it was in Burger King, whether it was in a bookshop, I would always try find ways to make extra pocket money. But let's not
Sure.
forget, these young kids already have side businesses or side hustles, as we call them, through online, right? They have their own e-commerce platform, they leverage, they sell things. So because they're at home, people think they're lazy. So it's a
Right.
perception. But
Yep.
you're right, Ashok. There is a trend now where people are beginning to appreciate this generation.
Oh,
All right,
okay.
it's more
Okay.
practical, but it's not everyone. But with
Okay.
those of us who have kids around that age, begin to appreciate that more. Because my daughter is Gen Z; she is at the tail end of Gen Z.
Okay.
But I've seen, they are even with 10, 12-year olds, the level of
Mhm.
entrepreneurship they have, just
Mhm.
they don't have, but the ideas they're very cross and the things they want to do is just great. So yeah, mollycoddle,
Right.
lazy, I'm not growing up, not
Demanding.
mature.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
demanding, right?
okay. I hear that. Thanks for that. I know Sham, you're dying to ask a question, but I'm going to throw one more question, then you can take over. Okay. Okay.
Mm,
And I agree with you, and this is what I am hearing also from the ground, right? Whether
mm,
at different organizations, uh, or social networks that I have and all that, when that
mm,
subject about the younger
mm,
generation comes about, the first thing, yeah, they say they are soft, they're
mm,
demanding, oh, they are useless, and then I'm wondering, who raised them up? Anyway, that's a different
mm,
topic. But but
mm,
but yes, I see how this language comes into organizations, and within the
mm,
organizations, when people who are at leadership position, whether it's managers, right, or leaders, right, when this language comes in, what it does is it influences certain mindsets. And I
mm,
suspect then, therefore, the relationships may be hampered. I suspect.
mm,
So in,
mm,
in your point of view, right, how can organizations engage these generation, the Gen Zs?
mm. Okay. I mean, uh, I like to put this into context, right? Because
Okay.
Gen Zs are exposed to different and diverse experiences across different continents, but
Okay.
generally, their traits are the same, and there's no one strategy that fits all. But there's only three letters I would say, right? Hot, HOT, hot. Keep it
Hot,
honest, keep it
honest.
open, keep it transparent, right?
Hmm.
Because the Gen Zs are witnessing so many events in their lifetime, right? They've seen how corporates behave irresponsibly. They've seen irresponsible, social political leaders. They've seen they've gone through a pandemic. They've got a lot of their own views, and values and behaviors shaped. And one of the
Okay.
things that has stuck with me, which I've observed, just leading Gen Zs, is that because there's been so much adverse information and adverse events happening, right? They're dispassionate about leaders. They don't trust the systems. They don't trust power structures,
Hmm.
right? They don't trust power structures. So when they come in, they're always going to be skeptical, right? They're always going to be skeptical. I've been approached by my young management trainees before, and they don't want to know what is, can't go and say, all right, this is the way this is the way the company has done it.
Okay.
They want to know why. What's your rationale, right? What's the reason why we operate in this manner? What is the reason
Hmm.
why we make these decisions? So the honesty with them and being authentic is something they value most. So you got to assume that, when you are sitting in front of a Gen Z, they're skeptical of you. As an
Okay.
organization, they're skeptical of you. They're skeptical of your values, your purpose, your mission. They say, oh, well, all companies have this great, documentation, or what we call narrative around what we are here for, what we serve the community. But in reality, they're all just out here for profit, right? And they will do
Okay.
anything to make profit. So they want to know why. So keeping it honest, open, and transparent, particularly with your decisions, with your policies, with even your hiring practices, right? I'll give you one example.
Okay.
Uh, we grew up where in an era, even now, I think it's happening in Singapore and many other countries. When you make a job offer and you make an offer letter, you say going to be paid XYZ. And then, the Gen Z will turn around and say, whether when they look at the number and they'll say, all right, I don't like it, or I like it, and then, they take it or they don't take it. But actually, what they're looking for is, all right, you're making this offer XYZ. How does my XYZ, fare on the market benchmark? Where am I? Right? Or what's your internal benchmark? These are details that for years, for decades, we've been secretive about. We say, no, 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 salary information. No, 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 no. Straight away, it's like a taboo word. But they want to know where they stand. Because don't forget, they're also, you find that as a generation, the Gen Zs are far more stressed out with their financial matters than we are.
Oh.
Inflation is hitting them hard.
Okay.
They think about cost. They are thinking about their financial future. I think most of us were born in the late 60s, 70s. In our mid 20s, we were a little bit more slackers. We enjoyed life, right?
Okay.
But these people are thinking about their future because they know it's going to cost an arm and a leg to get home. So it's not about the money they're after. They're also thinking about their financial security. So you have to be honest about where you're putting them and say, this is where it is. And be willing to negotiate, right? The C's are willing to negotiate, right? So whatever you do, and be prepared in that hot concept, be prepared to give mounds of feedback, because Gen Zs need a little bit of care. They want
Okay.
affirmation, validation, confirmation, right? So be prepared to give mounds of feedback. The Gen Zs at work, every time we have a meeting, they turn around and said, Vijay, do you have feedback for me? I never used to go and ask my boss, do you have feedback? My boss will give me feedback at the end of it. But these people will ask you for feedback. And it's always, is there anything I can do, right? What can I do to improve? how can I learn this, right? They are open to view. So be prepared to give feedback. And the challenge here, what I see here is we always think feedback is either good or bad.
Or bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me debunk that myth. It's rubbish.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
It's rubbish. I use the word rubbish because feedback is always neutral.
Okay.
The manner in which you give feedback and the manner in which you receive feedback determines whether it's good or bad.
That's spot on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And just hearing you speak about wanting, the example that you gave about the offer and then knowing where does that offer sit in the grand scheme of things, right? In that whole scheme that's called this organization, where does it sit? It comes across as fairness is a very important value for them, right? And it's like that is important. I need to know where am I pegged, all right? Are you shortchanging me, or am I getting a good deal, and not so much from a dollar value, but in comparison, is it fair? Is it a fair deal for me to be offered? Yeah.
Right.
I want to go back to what you had said earlier in the first instance. You said, there's the social consciousness, candid candor, and influence, right? I want to go back to candid and candor, because it's right in that space of communication.
Yeah.
And it's all about relationships, right? I mean, half the problems we have in leadership will be solved if we just fix that relationship part of the equation, right?
Yes.
And the relationship, a factor of the relationship is how we communicate with each other, right?
Absolutely.
And so I'm very direct. So I'm coming from a person who's like that by nature, not being a Gen Z, but I'm very direct with when I say something, right?
Yeah.
And it's gotten me into trouble.
Yes.
It's gotten me into trouble. People see it differently. People have different views of it. People assume that I'm not a nice person, whatever it is, but it's gotten me into trouble, right? So here I'm imagining this whole group of young, youngsters, young to the workforce, young to business, young to the working adult world. Here they are speaking their mind, being very, very open, being very direct. They have a point of view, and they don't couch it, or they don't swallow it. They're very comfortable sharing with it, right? How does that sit with leaders? And I'd like you to draw from your experience when you first experienced them, and what you have seen, or what you have perhaps grappled with as a CEO, and then asking the people that work with you, the leaders that work with you, how do you shift their mindsets? How did you work that?
Well, I think shifting the mindset of the leaders is someone's got to take the lead and grab the bull by his horns and do it first, right?
Okay.
Because even among leaders, there's this, as I told you, with their perception of Gen Zs, they always will have skepticism themselves. So the skepticism about Gen Zs and their skepticism about us as leaders is mutual. It's two-way, I would say. It's mutual. I've had experiences where, and I noticed this about Gen Zs, they're like, when they don't come to you individually. They come as a team. They come as a group. Right, my MTs used to come to me and say in Laos, and they say, "Veejay, we've got an issue to sort of table, right?" And it seems like they all have the common issues. So they come in and they come in and say, "We'd like to have a conversation with you." And what I've noticed in their conversations is they don't use the word "I," they use the word "we." We have, because they see this as something, their problems as being shared. It's not unique to them. Now, even in between, when they have a unique, they'll give you an unique example. But if it's something that afflicts most of them, they will come and see me. They've come to see me as a group, and they say, "We have issue to table with you." I've not seen something like that. I've not seen a group of people coming to my office or coming to where and say, "We like to have a conversation." And that, I think, is really courageous, right? It takes courage, but you can see the peer support and the fact that they feel that because we've got all these negative perceptions or adverse perceptions about us, we're on our own. We have to stand up for ourselves. So yeah, that's one. as leaders, there are two things we must remember. And I've learned this thanks to a lot of the mentors I've had in my leadership journey. First thing is, when you become a leader, you must remember there is nothing for you to prove. There is nothing for you to prove. Many leaders believe, I need to continue to prove I'm a leader. You don't need to. You didn't get up there, become a head of a department or a CHRO or a CEO by luck. You were appointed because you shown your credibility, your ability to lead, your capacity, right, and your talent. You've been appointed to that role. So no one just thinks, yeah, okay, I think we'll just go and draw somebody's name and let's make him the CXO of a business or a CEO or a GM or a head of the department. You've earned you've had your battle scars, right? You've fallen, you've got up, you've learned, you've shown this ability to take things forward, make those sound decisions, be pragmatic in your decision making under pressure. So don't ever think as a leader you have to prove yourself. Now, the first thing that I did when I became a CXO was, and this was in 2017 when I got to Cambodia. The first thing I told my team of direct reports is my job is to make me redundant, because I've already got there. There's nothing for me to prove, guys. My job is to. So it's this position is for you to take, is for you to grow into. My position, right? So how many leaders will come in and say that? My job is to make me redundant. No, the way I meant it was, only if I can find a successor or a group of people who are ready to take over, can I then go and do the next bigger job. So it is not through me that I prove whether I'm good for the next job. It is through my people that I show that I'm ready to take on something else.
Okay.
So leaders, first thing you got to remember, you got nothing to prove when you're there, right? Stop doing that. That's the first one. The second thing is, what are we paid for as leaders? Is $1 million question. And people say, oh, we give direction, vision, articulate mission, this. Bottom line, we are paid to have conversations.
Oh,
as leaders, we are paid to have conversations, right?
Can you elaborate a bit more?
Yeah. So we are, if you spend 80% of your time micromanaging and looking at operations, you're not having conversations. You're managing. You're not leading. As a leader, you're supposed to be having conversations with your stakeholders, with your employees, right down from your direct reports, right down to the receptionist of the office, the tea lady, right? You see? You should be having conversations. We are paid to have the conversations. We are paid to go in there and say, look, how are you doing? Is everything okay? I still remember my regional CEO when I was in Hong Kong. He's always a busy guy on the phone in meetings, because we spend, death by meetings is very common for us leaders. But whatever little time he had, he would walk the corridors and he would stop by and say, hey, how's it going? Right? And it feels really good to have your CEO stop by and just have a conversation. And he just doesn't say, how is it going? And he walks off. He stands there, have a 5-10 minute conversation with me and walks away. And I noticed during my time in Hong Kong, this was Hong Kong, this at least 4 years there, 4-5 years, yeah. I met my CEO most of the time just outside the men's toilet. And we had conversations there. 10-15 minutes and then we walk off. But that's what we are paid to do. We're supposed to be connecting. We need to find out what's happening on the ground, right? More often than not, we get too distant and too far away that we lose track and we lose touch. So conversations help us to stay relevant. Conversations help us to bring in new perspectives into our decision making, because we always rely on the past, but we do not know what's happening in the present. So conversations actually bring us to speed. So that's what we're paid for, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we're paid for. We're all paid for conversations.
Vijay, I'm going to go dive in a little here. Okay, so somebody
Before
who
you do,
says, okay,
go ahead. Yeah.
somebody said, yes, he remembers this vividly when you were back in Cambodia. My job is to make me redundant. So yes, he's
Yeah.
given you the swipe right, thumbs up, validation,
Yeah.
confirmation.
Affirmation.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
No, my job is okay. Vijay, when you were describing about the leaders, right, and your personal journey, now I cannot but think that there's something deeper here. What I mean by that is this: you must have had a lot of reflections,
Oh,
right,
yes.
for you to come forward and say, you know what, I've got nothing to prove. Number one,
Yeah.
right, and number two, with that your 25 years of experience, right, you said at the end of the day we are paid to have conversations. Now, I believe all of this would have come through a lot of intense reflection, or not.
Yeah.
If it's not so intense, at least reflections, right? Could you help us understand how you came to this insight, this view for yourself?
Okay. Well, my personal journey has been this. My personal view has been this: that as a leader, you don't have all the answers. You're always a student,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
First thing, I'm always a student. Even today, I'm halfway through my life, and I still say I'm a student, right?
Okay.
So I've had mentors. I even engaged a coach, right? I had a coach with me, and it was these people who sort of, what a coach does is very different. A coach actually is not there to tell you what to do. The coach just holds up a mirror and
Okay.
says, "This is you. What you're saying. Look at this. This is you." They'll
Right.
mirror you, right? They'll tell you what you are. And it was through some of these coaches that they sort of dismantled that very tough exterior I used to have,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
I was like, I looked up to a lot of these, high dominating, the high D leaders, and that brought me, so, and advanced my career to a certain extent, no doubt about it. But that D mentality was not going to take me into the future.
Okay.
And it was somebody who was bold enough to come and tell me, and dismantle all that sort of Lego bricks I'd built up, and took them apart bit by bit and showed me who I really was. And that was not the tough guy, right? I had become that tough guy at the office. But actually, I was one of those easygoing, very happy, very positive, uh, never the taskmaster kind of person. So you do need, an ecosystem or infrastructure around you as a leader. And I can tell you at the top as a CEO, it is, if I may put it bluntly, very lonely, right? Everybody wants to be a CEO. Once you become a CEO, you realize how lonely it is at the top. It's very quiet.
Yeah.
So who do you talk to? So you need to have the peer support group, right? You need to have a mentor. You need to have a good buddy. You also need to have a coach. So it was those people that helped me break me down like this, and of course the youngsters that I sort of got myself exposed to, the Gen Zs, helped me to also look at even my daughter differently. I was raising her the same way my father raised me, right? My father was a very strict disciplinarian. He always said, "It's discipline that will get you through." But the methods in which you teach discipline have evolved significantly over the years. So therefore, it was that personal journey that I experienced. It was, I think, an eye-opening experience for me, which actually made me who I am today.
Nice. Nice.
I'm
So
just going to,
sorry. Okay.
Ashok, hold on. I just want to just take one step into what Vijay said about that realization, right? You said it dismantled like a Lego set. I like that analogy, that metaphor, right? And it showed the person that I had become is not really the person that I am, right?
Yeah.
And I might be putting you here on the spot, but I'm just going to try and do that. And if you're not comfortable, please just say
Sure.
you're not comfortable to do this, right?
Mm.
Well, that transformation, the person who you are normally, jovial, happy, into
Mm.
this mold of a CEO, or this is what a leader should be,
Mm.
was that you fitting into a certain kind of culture, or
It was
something else?
no, it was a bit of both. I think it was a bit of both. I think it was also the way, it's also got to go back to the way my parents raised me, right?
Mm.
Mm,
Remember, they set parameters. They always tell you, don't do this, do this. Remember, you've got to prove yourself. You've got to work hard. It's at the end of the day, it's not about your friends. It's you are on your own if something goes wrong. So there are
mm,
always a lot of boards, do's and don'ts that, as Asian parents, and I would refer to my parents, they set
mm,
up so many parameters for me, right? Right. Even when I got into a very good school, and I do know that some of my schoolmates are actually in this session, right? They used to, we had a different way, right? But it was my parents who say, oh, this is what it is. This is how you, when you get to work, if I was going to
mm,
change a job, they would say, oh, you should stay on, you shouldn't change. Job hopping is bad. It looks bad on your CV. There were so many things that always I had to have this impression. I was given this impression. I had to always prove myself,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
mm,
So much so that I lost my authenticity,
mm,
Uh,
mm.
right?
Thank you for sharing that. And
wow.
Yeah.
and and I'm just going to draw a parallel to what
Mm.
some leaders in organizations do. We do the similar thing, right? As what you just
Mm.
described,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that we'd have to be in this more. There's list of do's and don'ts, and
Mm.
you you subscribe to that, or
Mm.
then you fit in, or you're part of the team, or
Yeah.
you don't, right? You've got to do certain things in order to achieve more. You've got to do certain
Mm.
things to be the best performer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
um
Yeah.
hmm,
I got to say thank you very much, Vijay, because it wasn't easy for you to have that conversation.
Mm.
And you answered the question that Sham asked earlier about what are the skills and mindset that leaders need, and you
hmm,
demonstrated with your own experience,
Mm.
what you've gone through, and I like your statement that you said when you said, what, as leaders, I'm still a student, and
Yeah.
I think that is what also has helped you bridge this and understand and reflect within that this is
Mm.
not the persona that you are.
No.
Who are you really, and what do you want to be, and how do
Mm.
you want to be going forward? And those conversations, those reflections are not easy, right?
Yeah.
And I guess, like what you said, the infrastructure around you, whether it's the peers or the coaches, has helped
Mm.
you as a leader. Perhaps this
Yeah.
is something that different organizations can also help leaders, right,
Mm.
to unearth and let them be more authentic for who they are,
Yeah.
because we are dealing with the future leaders, so we need to be different,
True.
right?
True.
We can't
Well,
be reflective of our parents. Sorry,
yeah.
you're saying?
No, so I
yeah.
was saying this is exactly what I do, right? Except at the moment, while I'm already like in a semi-retired mode, but I'm spending a lot of time coaching not just young people, but also CEOs. I've
Mm,
got a good cohort or network of CEOs on LinkedIn
nice.
who I speak to like once a month, and we just talk about things, and they feel really good because one of the things about
Hmm,
finding somebody where you can take things off your chest, it allows you to think clearly because those
Right.
things cloud your psyche and your decision
yep,
making skills. So the
yep.
ability, and the thing is, you can't go to one of your people and say it, and your bosses aren't interested in listening. Let me tell you, they have got their own problems, right?
Yeah.
Very few would take time and say, yes, I'm willing to have a conversation with you, because everything is so short term now. No one talks about the midterm or long term. Everybody talks about
Hmm,
2022. No one says 2022 to 2025 is our mission,
oh,
but
good. Yep.
with 2022
Mm,
it's all short term, right? We've moved to short termism. And so I've spoken to the CEOs, and they actually tell me it's great to have a peer on the other side, just for me to express themselves and for that
Hmm,
peer to give candid feedback, which I feel good about, right?
hmm,
Even
hmm,
if it sounds like I'm being scrutinized, The fact is somebody is scrutinizing me and telling me straight in the face, look, this is not going to work for you, or giving me an idea. So I do have these sort of peer group conversations with some fellow CEOs across the Asia Pac, and that's something, it's also good for me because uh, being semi-retired, you're also not speaking to people. So this is the way I interact and network, keep my communication skills sharp, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's mutually beneficial, right? And I encourage people to do that. And I encourage people, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a manager, whether you're a CHRO, or whether you're a department head, or whether you're just even a clerical officer, right? Administrative staff. You should have your network of peers where you can talk about your issues in private, and be able to take that off your chest so that you can think clearly.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is for leaders, what you said is do your self-reflection. If you can have a coach, even fantastic. Have those conversations and have those network of people where you can bounce off ideas and all of that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. And then on the flip side, right? How do we then help the Gen Zs develop to drive results?
Yeah.
Right. So we've spoken about the leaders, and now let's talk back about the kids, right? You said the Gen Zs or Z. How do we now develop them to drive results?
Okay. So, I mean, Gen Zs, they're exposed to so much, they consume so much information, right? Okay. Well, there's some that are interested in data, but a lot of them, they're exposed to so much information, trends, experiences, it's borderless, right? They see the world on their mobile device. And I go back to the fact that they get a lot of ideas from this. They say, if I was in charge, I would do something different. So here's what I think we all must do. We must have this culture of empowerment and enablement, right? You must allow a platform for them to express themselves. So one of these things with the MTs that I do, and I call them MTs because I give them, to build their credibility, they come through a 2-year program with the organizations I lead, because it gives them exposure to many places to learn, because they're very keen in this. They're very keen in exploring. They can't sit still, right? You can't bring an MT and say, just do this job. No. You bring Gen Zs, and you've got to give them a diverse experience within your organization. So we do things in Laos. What we do is we adopt this philosophy called the insurgent mindset. It was actually coined by Bain and Company, a consulting firm, right?
Okay.
There's a book on it, and that is, we always have sandbox ideas, right? Ideas being thrown in the sandbox. We can do this. We can do this, right? Every now and then, every 2 weeks, we'll have a session where a group of people will come in and say, what are the ideas we can do to improve our visibility, our brand experience, our customer experience, our purpose, right? So it's not just external, but it also can be internal. Okay. And, I've actually got Gen Zs to say, all right, this is a great idea. Let's go try it out. Now, we have to remember this, and in enablement and empowerment. Now, we always talk about agile. Agile means you must learn to fail. You must make room for failure, right? Because it's a learning process. That is why agile is always called constant iteration of your and there's no such thing as a final product. So we must remember that what you have to create is a psychological safety for them to do this, right? And be there. So when they fail and they fall, make sure you are there to catch them as a net. If you're the sponsor, you must be that safety net where they can fall into, right? So if you give them ideas to do that, I'll give you a brilliant idea that came to me through a young bunch of people in Laos. So in 2021, we spent about 9 months in lockdown. 2020, we were not hardly hit. Laos was hardly hit by the pandemic because they just locked the borders down, and there was still domestic consumption. Then the second wave came, the third wave came for us in Laos. So literally lockdown. How do we run the business? So the kids come up with the idea and say, let's do this. I said, well, can we do something like that? And one of the kids told me, the Gen Zs, he said, "Hey, that's a good idea, Vijay. We can do it by A, B, C, D." I said, let's start this thing going,
Okay.
right? So it was a simple idea. And at the end of the year, we actually grew through that Gen Z idea. We grew our customer base 9 times. 9 times. It only took us 11 days to from ideation to execution, because these boys and girls were so advanced on tech, right? They knew exactly which was the quickest way to do it, right? And of course, there was learning from the initial rollout. Then we sort of tweaked it 2 weeks later. But that's what you should do as an organization. You give them the empowerment, you give them the enablement, let them test their ideas, let them come and present those ideas, give them the confidence, provide the psychological security for them. And when they learn, amplify the learning, because that's what they're looking for. Remember, I said affirmation, validation, confirmation. Amplify the learning, celebrate the small wins. In most companies, we only celebrate the big win, right? And we do not condone failure. But didn't we all fail before we became successful?
Okay.
Right? So what these Gen Zs, we have to amplify it.
Amplify it, yeah.
Amplify the learning behind it.
Yeah. Amplify the learning, celebrate the small wins, right?
Yep.
Right?
So I know, Sham, you're gearing to ask a question. Okay, I'll keep quiet for a while.
Yeah, good. You're a fast student study. So that was the results part of it, right? And the equation has the other part, which is the relationship. So I keep coming back to the relationship because one of the things you said earlier on, Vijay, was that the kids, they feel left out. They feel like they're on their own, right? And any relationship it's usually it's not just a single party involved. There's either a second party or a third party involved, right? So just keep it to two parties, the kids and the leaders, right? So we talked about what the leaders can do. Now here we have the Gen Zs. What would be your advice to them from a perspective of relationship that they can do or do differently, or do more of, or start doing in terms of assimilating into the group? Because it's two ways, right?
Yep.
It's I don't accept you, then that's one, right? The other is I kind of want to stand off by myself. I really don't want to go.
So I think this is a bit of both. So there needs to be an intergenerational conversation happening, but it starts with us as the leaders. So the first thing leaders need to do to create that environment is start being vulnerable, being human, right? We don't have all the answers. There are times where I look at my youngsters and say, actually, I don't know, but let me go and find out. And when you say you're going to find out, right? And I make it a point to find out by myself. I don't delegate that. I find out and I'll tell the boys and girls, look, this is what I found out. Is this good enough? Right? Because they're going to hold you accountable the same way you hold them accountable. Remember, I told you they're already dispassionate about the leadership, about systems, about about power structures. So first thing, we have to be vulnerable. So in order for you to be vulnerable, you got to create connections, emotional and psychological and mental connections. To do that, you must step down from your perch. As a leader, you must step down to a perch. I'll give you an example of what I did in Laos. And I was actually, people were laughing at me when I did that. I went into the office. I said, all CXOs, no offices, demolish all the offices. We all hot desk. Right? Because the average age, excluding me, was 23.
Wow.
I was the oldest at 40, 49, 48 at that time. Right? But the moment you took those offices away, visually and by experience, you narrowed that space. You got closer to your people. That's the sort of impression you create. And I hot desk with the Gen Zs, And if I was stuck at something, I said, sorry, can I stop you guys? And I would sit with them in a hot desk and I said, I have this problem. Now, if you, and this is the context of the problem, how would you fix it? So what I've tried to do is I've tried to involve them. I said, I also have problems. You guys don't have problems. I also have problems as a CEO.
Okay.
And this is my problem. What would you do if you were me? I just wanted to hear. So you got to involve them. So you're being authentic about this. That I too, as a CEO, it's not this cushy job. We've got a fancy car and a driver, and we're cutting ribbons, we're exchanging certificates, right? Signing. We have other things that we deal with, which nobody sees behind the scenes. So that's one of those things where it allows them to appreciate that your job's not that easy, right? So you got to create that emotional and mental connection with Gen Zs. And the last thing that you have to do as a leader is listen more, speak less. Listen more, speak less. As leaders, we're so used to giving speeches, we speak more, we listen less. Right? And we don't have to have a last word or everything. I've gone to town halls in my career where I've stood there and I've apologized to staff for a mess up by one of the functions which has hit most of the staff. As a leader, take that accountability, show that you are willing to stand up when it's wrong and take the rap. And they actually will appreciate that more. So it's you've got to pull them in first. Break the skepticism down. And then you say, look, I'm giving you the freedom, but note, the freedom is not an entitlement, it's a privilege. Right? Abuse it and the freedom will go. And I think that awareness must be there.
Okay.
Right? I'll finish off with one example.
Sure.
So in Laos, what I did was I completely abolished working hours. Right? We always say office hours is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's in our contract. But these kids are not 8 a.m. people. These are people who like to get up late, spend time the whole night on their phone, interact with their friends to late suppers, get up late, come into the office. And one of the feedback I got from all my Gen Zs is the best HR policy or HR decision I made was abolish the working hours. And I say, I hold you accountable to finish the work. I don't care. This is gig remote. You work remote. I have no problems, right? When we have a meeting, cameras must be on. If your camera doesn't work, get into the office. Because I still need that visual, right?
Yeah.
And so I have kids coming in. They come in about 9, 10 o'clock, but they don't go home at 5. They're actually there till 6, 7, 8 o'clock. They have dinner together, and then they finish a bit more work. Then they head up for late supper, and then they go home. They spend time on their phones. They have friends across the world. That's probably the time where, Europe and US is open, right? And then they come right back into the, they'll wake up at 8, 9 a.m. and come to the office at 10. So I always say, you got to raise them, trust them the same way you trust your kids.
Okay.
You can't have double standard. Oh, I trust my kids, but I don't trust the kids of somebody else.
Yeah. Fair enough. No, I hear you. I hear you very well. And thank you very much, Veejay, because you shared a lot of ideas our listeners are going to be taking away, because really a lot of ideas for leaders and organizational put the right structures in place. Now, the question I have is this: if I'm a new Gen Z, I'm trying to get into that space. I'm a young man, young boy, and if I'm coming into the workplace,
wish.
Right, yeah. So, I come up to you and say, "Hey, Coach Veejay, I'm going to go into ABC company. I've got my job already. What is the one advice that you will give me? I'm a Gen Z now. I'm going into the corporate space.
I only say to them, be a sponge, learn, absorb everything around you, right? And then after you've learned everything, you can decide what you want to retain and what you want to squeeze out. and that'll become your next development. So always be a sponge, right? Go in with an open mind, go in there as a dry sponge, absorb everything. Absorb first before you decide to
Be a sponge and absorb.
yeah,
Absorb. Nice.
absorb.
Absorb first before you. Sorry, can
Before you
you?
decide to repel, right, or squeeze
Mm,
excess, right? You can then decide
mm,
what excess you want to kick out, because your belief system, all of us are different. Our value and belief system will say, okay, I reject this, I accept this.
mm,
For them to absorb, the first thing they need to know is, where's the transparency? What am I getting myself into?
mm,
That's primarily very critical.
mm.
Very
So
critical.
absorb, then make the decision as to
Yes, right.
what you're going
So
to keep and what you want
okay,
to.
and whether you want to stay, whether you want to go, I can tell you,
Mm,
Sham, that if you speak to a lot of Gen Zs, I mean, Singapore is a bit of a exception if you look at the studies.
yeah.
The Gen Zs love the traditional jobs, but they still prefer.
Mm,
If you
mm.
look around Asia Pacific, 36 to 38% of people would say, I'd rather be out of a job than go to a job which I don't like.
Like, mm.
A third of Gen
Yeah,
Zs are
first
believing
start.
in that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a third.
yeah.
That's 30%,
Yeah,
right?
because as
Well,
you said earlier on, I mean, they've got side businesses, they're running multiple side hustles, right? So I don't need the mainstream
yeah,
work or
yeah,
employment to define me, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
And in a way, the whole pandemic has forced all of us to become some form of Gen Z. You think
yeah,
about it. This event
yeah.
is virtual, it's hybrid.
Yep.
Some of us are at home, and this is something in our time we would never do. It was everybody at the office, conference call.
Yes, exactly. There you go. We have come quite some ways. I hope
Yeah.
we keep the learning and use that learning, because I'm seeing some people regressing as if the last 2 years never happened,
Mm.
and it's going back to whatever default was before. So we've
Yeah.
come to almost the end of our 1 hour together,
Oh,
and I
wow.
thought to help, yeah, it's so fast, right? With the discussion going the way it is, I thought I'd like to ask you a question that will help us summarize and summarize the 1 hour that we've had together. And the
Mm.
question is this: if I'm listening in and or watching, right, and I could very well say, Vijay, easy for you to say, you were a CEO, you were at that level where you could make decisions that
Mm.
that maybe didn't need anybody to sign off on, and you could go ahead and do it, right? Like, pulling
Mm.
down the offices and
Mm.
instituting transparency around salaries and, offer letters. I'm a leader who has some authority, but I don't have the authority that you have. So if
Mm.
I'm a leader like that, listening in and saying, okay, what would be your advice to that leader with a group of Gen Zs,
Mm.
under me? What would
Mm.
be your advice going into office tomorrow? What's the one thing that you would tell me to do to get me bridging
Mm.
that relationship
Mm.
with my team?
Okay. I always believe in one thing. You can only control what you can control,
Mm,
Okay.
right?
yeah,
So if you can
agreed.
control your conversations, if you have the power to have those conversations which you're paid for, that's a great start point. Start having those
Mm,
conversations. Take down your defense mechanisms and start having conversations, right? Because that's how you begin to champion the change, right? So having the conversations. So you said that, yes, but even before I became a CEO, when I was working with Gen Zs, I promoted Gen Zs, I championed them. I championed the cause, right? You must, if
mm,
you want to, you got to champion it. And what I did was I did things with my team, showed it was good, could be done to influence the rest.
mm,
So remember, I had a lot of skepticism from my peers about Gen Zs when I first started hiring them. But once I started showing the benefits and the value these people bring to the table, and all you need is to lead the intergenerational conversations and be there as sort of their protector. Something goes wrong, you're there, you
mm,
create a safety net for them, right? The psychological
mm.
safety, the results will show. So it's a belief system, right? So start, if there's something you can control, focus on what you can control. Don't think too much of what you cannot control. Half full is better than half empty.
Yeah,
Right.
nicely said.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
for thank you for
Pleasure's
being
mine.
with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just for our listeners and all, what Vijay has shared with us is about the power of the Gen Zs. They've got a lot of candor. They can influence brands. They are digital natives. They are our future leaders, and how we can help them be the best versions of themselves as leaders. We can learn to have the hot conversations, the honest, open, transparent conversations, and create the right structures within the organizations to build that psychological safety so we can propel their performance and build that relationships that really matter. Thank you very, very much, Vijay, for sharing with us your experience.
You're most welcome. Vijay, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers and our listeners before I put you down back into the backstage?
Well, I would just say yes. Be curious. There's nothing more than curiosity. If you're curious about Gen Zs, they'll be curious about you. In anything we do, curiosity is so important. Be that student. Forever student is what I always say.
All right.
That's your
very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
Vijay,
you.
the student.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you for joining us, Vijay. I'm going to push you down to the backstage while we close off the show for this.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
All right. Wow.
There we go. Wow.
That's
right
that's
from
a lot.
the horse's mouth, the person who has done it, who's
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing like listening to a real practitioner, isn't it?
Correct.
And he's been there, and I like the fact that he was very open to say, you know what, I'm not perfect. I've got to let my mask down, my personas and all that. And I move forward. And he said, be a sponge, be the leader, ask questions, and be willing to be different in that sense. And wow, there's a lot of learnings here today,
Right.
and that fills in with our theme for the month: leadership trends and challenges.
Yeah, I think sometimes we make a mountain of a molehill. And I think what's going to happen is that the next generation is going to be significantly different from the Gen Zs that we have right now. And we're going to, we need to find ways to work with the different generations. Because mind you, as we progress as a society, as a country, as a nation, as the world, we are getting better, right? We're getting better. We have more money. We can give better experiences to our children. We're giving them more exposure in various ways. So they are going to be different than who we are, right? And I think if we expect that and we acknowledge that, I think it's a lot easier for us when you're leaders and leading a multi-generational team.
That's true.
I think there's no such thing as a cookie cutter nowadays. It's you got to match it as you see fit, depending on what you have. So we don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you so much for being with us this Thursday evening. This is our first week of on the theme of 2023 leadership trends and challenges. Join us next Thursday. Next Thursday, and we'll have a new topic for us to discover and explore for 2023. Bye, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Sham, and bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for listening in.